Hello, my friends, and welcome to Hidden Scriptures Word Study Commentary number 177. The topic for today's word study is, did our Messiah really break the Sabbath by healing a man and then instructing him to carry his mat? Antinomian Christians have been taught to believe the Pharisees whenever they read about them accusing our Messiah of breaking the Sabbath, which they accused him of on several occasions. That will be the topic for today's word study commentary. Was our Messiah guilty of what the Pharisees were accusing him of? I will start off by using the NIV because they, along with the English Standard Version and the Revised Version and the updated American Standard Version, omit the verse 4 comment about angels coming down to stir up the water. This stirring of the water was merely a natural geological phenomenon that originated within the deep rock strata under this pool of water, which would take place from time to time. It was just a natural occurrence. Jewish folklore led people back then to believe that getting into the water after this natural phenomenon took place would bring about their healing. Okay, let's find out if our Messiah truly broke the Sabbath by healing this man and telling him to take up his mat. John chapter 5 and verse 1. Sometime later, Yahushua went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Of course, we know from the previous word study commentary that this Jewish festival was the one-day feast of Shavuot, the day of Pentecost. Verse 2. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. The location of this pool has been found and confirmed. I've watched one or two YouTube videos where they document and talk about the finding of this pool called Bethesda. And it's just fascinating to me how they're digging down and finding all these things that we have read about in the renewed covenant scriptures. Okay, verse 3. Here, a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Yahushua saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, 38 years, he asked him, "Do you want to get well? Do you want to be made whole?" "Sir," the invalid man replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Yahushua said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." At once, the man was cured. He was healed. He was made whole. He picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this miracle took place was a Sabbath. And so the Jewish leaders, the religious elite ruling class, said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." The Pharisees took no notice of this healing whatsoever. They completely ignored that. What they fixated on was this healed man carrying a rolled up bamboo mat on the Sabbath. The Pharisees accused this man of violating the law. But which law were they accusing this man of violating? Did he violate and break the Mosaic law? Or was it their own law of unlawfully added rules and regulations? To answer that, let's find if there is a prohibition in the Mosaic law for someone to carry something as lightweight as a rolled up bamboo mat. I just typed in bamboo mat because I read that it could have been either a bamboo mat that this man rolled up, or it could have been palm tree leaves, woven palm tree leaves. Okay, either one. It could have been, but either one would have been an extremely lightweight mat. Okay, so let's find out if there is a prohibition in the Torah, the Mosaic Law, for someone to carry something as lightweight as a rolled up bamboo mat or woven palm leaf mat. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, to keep it set apart. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to Yahuwah your Elohim. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner, which is a meaning a grafted in Gentile, residing in your towns. Okay, then we drop down to chapter 23 and verse 12. 6 days do your work, but on the seventh day do not work, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and so that the slave born in your household and the foreigner, the grafted in Gentile, living among you may be refreshed. Observe the Sabbath, because it is holy and set apart to you. Anyone who desecrates it is to be put to death. Those who do any work on that day must be cut off from the people. Okay, folks, remember, when this command was given, the society, the culture was an agricultural culture. I have a hard time saying that word. And the reason I say that is because the Father understands that the circumstances has changed in our modern society. Okay, in Israel, where they are a very focused culture and society on observing the Sabbath day and remembering to keep it a set apart day of rest. Well, we have ambulance drivers, we have hospital personnel, we have EMTs, all these folks, the police officers, the fire departments in Israel. Well, these folks have to work, okay? On the Sabbath day, we have to have these folks in the hospital. We have to have staff in the hospital. We have to have staff on the police force and in the fire departments. The Father understands this. But for us, modern day believers, if we have the Sabbath, and I'm talking about the seventh day of the week Sabbath, if we have that time off, then we should remember the Sabbath and make it a day of rest. Okay, I remember, and I'm getting way off script, but I remember I spent the last 13 and a half years of my truck driving career hauling raw milk from dairy farms to the processing plants. Well, folks, the cows, the Holstein cows and Jersey, some of the dairies would bring in Jerseys to elevate the fat content of the milk because that's how they were paid. They were paid not only on weight, but also on the fat contents. So, but anyway, I'm getting way off script here. But these cows, they don't know the day that they are not to give milk. No, they give milk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So in my job, working for the company that I worked for, hauling this raw milk, well, it was a 7 day a week schedule. Okay. And there were the first part of my career with this company, I had to work on the Sabbath. I wanted to keep the Sabbath, but I had to work. I had no choice. Well, I would pray about it. And I kept praying about it. And finally, with no input from me, my boss changed my work schedule to where I was off every single weekend. Okay. So, I was so happy with that schedule change because I had every Sabbath off and I loved it. And I spent, well, like I said, the last 13 some odd years, 13 and a half years with this company. And for the majority of those 13 years, I enjoyed a schedule where I didn't have to work the weekends. So anyway, let me get back into the script here. Verse 14, observe the Sabbath because it is holy and set apart to you. Anyone who desecrates it is to be put to death. Those who do any work on that day must be cut off from their people. Okay, again, folks, we gotta read this verse and apply it to today's situation. You know, anyone who desecrates it is to be put to death. Well, it is my belief, in my opinion, that this is talking about folks who, in our modern day society, have the Sabbath day off, but they choose not to remember it. They choose not to observe it as the fourth commandment and to not make it a holy and set apart day of rest unto the Father. They are to be put to death. Well, again, my belief, my opinion. When it's talking about being put to death, this is talking about the second death. Okay, verse 15. For 6 days work is to be done, but the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, holy and set apart to Yahuwah. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day is to be put to death. And again, I believe that this is talking about the second death, and it is referring to those who have a schedule that allows them to observe the Sabbath as a set apart day of rest, but they choose not to do so. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 12. Observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy and set apart to Yahuwah, your Elohim, as commanded you, as he has commanded you. Verse 13, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to Yahuwah, your Elohim. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your ox, your donkey, or any of your animals, nor any foreigner, this is a grafted in Gentile, residing in your town, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. Okay, so what the Mosaic law, the Torah, actually says is that the Sabbath is to be a set apart day of rest and refreshing, and that no work was to be done on that day. So the question is, does picking up and carrying a lightweight bamboo or woven palm leaf mat considered work? Let's read below these two passages in the prophets, which will help to bring clarity and perhaps answer that question. Okay, we start off in Nehemiah chapter 13 and verse 15. In those days I saw people in Yehuda treading wine presses on the Sabbath and bringing in the sheaves and loading donkeys with wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I warned them about the day on which they were selling provisions. Men of Tyre dwelt there also, who brought in fish and all kinds of goods, and sold them on the Sabbath to the children of Yehuda and in Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Yehuda and said to them, what evil thing is this that you do by which you profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers do this? And did not our Elohim bring all this disaster on us and all on this city? Yet you bring added wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath. So it was at the gates of Jerusalem as it began to be dark before the Sabbath that I commanded the gates to be shut and charged that they must not be open till after the Sabbath. Then I posted some of my servants at the gate so that no burden would be brought in on the Sabbath day. Now the merchants and sellers of all kinds of wares lodged outside Jerusalem once or twice. Then I warned them and said to them, why do you spend the night around the wall? If you do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time on, they came no more on the Sabbath. Okay, then we drop down to Yirmiyahu. We know him as Jeremiah. Thus says Yahuwah, take heed to yourselves and bear no burden on the Sabbath day, nor bring it in by the gates of Jerusalem, nor carry a burden out of your houses on the Sabbath day, nor do any work, but hallow the Sabbath day as I commanded your fathers. Okay, so let's apply a little common sense here. Can it be considered a burden for someone to carry a lightweight bamboo mat? Carrying this mat would be no more of a burden than carrying your Bible to a Sabbath day home fellowship meeting. Also, would the fourth commandment, the same commandment that Antinomian Christians break every week, calling for the observance of the Sabbath to remember to make it a set apart day of rest and refreshing for man and beast in preparation for the coming work week, apply to this man in this particular situation? In other words, does a man who has not walked or performed any manual labor for 38 years need a day of rest and refreshing in order to get physically ready for another week of not walking or doing any manual labor? Let's continue. But he replied, the man who was healed, the man who made me well said to me, pick up your mat and walk. So they asked him, who is this fellow who told you to pick it up and walk? The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Yahushua had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Later, Yahushua found him at the temple and said to him, see, you are well again. You are whole again. Stop sinning. Stop transgressing the Mosaic law, the Torah, or something worse may happen to you. Apparently, this man who was healed and could now walk for the first time in 38 years did not appreciate being told that he needed to stop sinning. Verse 15, the man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Yahushua who had made him well, had made him whole. So, because Yahushua were doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders, the religious elite ruling class leaders, began to persecute him. Okay, so what was Yahushua? What were the things that he was doing on the Sabbath? Doing what things? Apparently, once again, the religious elite ruling class, the Pharisees, took issue with Yahushua ignoring and disregarding their laws, their unlawfully added rules and regulations by healing and doing miracles on the Sabbath day. In his defense, Yahushua said to them, My Father is always at work to this very day, and I too am working. For this reason, the Pharisees, the religious elite ruling class, tried all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling Elohim his own father, making himself equal with Elohim. Again, was the Messiah breaking the Sabbath? No, of course not. What he was breaking and ignoring and disregarding was their laws of unlawfully added rules and regulations. Folks, the bottom line is this: the Messiah never broke, never violated, or never transgressed any of the commands, any of the instructions, or any of the teachings of his Father to his people that are contained in the Mosaic Law, the Torah. Antinomian Christians need to stop agreeing with the Pharisees when they read about them accusing our Messiah of breaking, violating, and transgressing the Mosaic Law. This reminds me of a long ago conversation that I had with an antinomian Christian family member, where they stated to me that the reason Jesus gave the Pharisees such a hard time was because they were teachers of the law. I can't recall my response at the time, but I can certainly remember with clarity that statement. How can you have a meaningful conversation about Scripture with someone with that kind of mentality? But this is what this individual was probably taught by their antinomian pastor to believe, and they didn't question it. Okay, everyone, I will leave it here for today. I love you guys, and I very much appreciate you being here and watching. It really means a lot to me. And we will be with you again in our next Hidden Scriptures Word Study Commentary. Take care, and I hope to see you again.